They say we're loud, opinionated, afraid, telling us to hush, dim our historical light. But darlings, we're the heartbeat, sharp and keen, unveiling the truth behind the silver screen.
History harpies hear us roar. Through the ages we explore. Fashion, film, and TV's lore. Spilling tea, wanting more.
I'm Lauren. And I'm Christine. And this is our 21st episode. And it's going to be a short one, Lauren. I hate to say it.
No, it's going to be a short one, but we want to give our listeners what they want, which is us. More frequently than not. And so today we are going to talk about the amazing Eddie Murphy. And you might say, Eddie Murphy. Why Eddie Murphy? And the answer is, well, Christine watched a documentary and told me that I needed to watch the documentary. And then we got to talking about Eddie Murphy and his versatile career and all the movies that we love. And we said, well, we should just do a pod on Eddie Murphy. And so that's where we are.
And certainly we have to appreciate, right, these decades of, again, as you say, very diverse roles. And certainly one of the other reasons I think it makes sense for us to be doing this pod, Lauren, about Eddie Murphy is that, you know, our listeners may remember that you are a specialist in modern American popular culture. And certainly one of the things that is really interesting to think about when we think about the career of Eddie Murphy is sort of changes in kind of African-American actors in American popular culture from when he starts in the early 1980s really to today, sort of his place among actors in general, comedians in general, stand-up comedy, and all of the different things that he's done, how he's supported black actors, how he's worked with a lot of different kinds of actors and creatives. And you, of course, have, Lauren, the historical context.
And I now realize also that I hadn't really thought about it this way, but that some of my teaching is actually through the lens of Eddie Murphy. And again, most of my classes start in the early 19th century, so they were not all that way. But Eddie Murphy is very close to my heart in terms of thinking about comedy and humor, but also thinking about somebody who has crafted his own career, who makes all kinds of interesting choices, who has, again, tried to reinvent genres, and who uses physicality in a way that we don't see a lot of people doing that anymore, at least, in terms of playing characters of all races, ethnicities, body shapes, and being himself, not himself. He's so interested in getting into makeup and transforming himself, and that's another thing that I think we can think about.
Yes, and he has done so sometimes for good and sometimes for evil. It has not always worked out. And so I guess, and of course we've already talked about Eddie Murphy in the pod. Because we talked about Trading Places, a movie that you love. And that I enjoyed, certainly, but I, of course, could not enjoy as much as you do as a Philly girl. But I'm going to ask you, because I remember this so strongly, so I'm going to ask you, when did Eddie Murphy first show up on your radar?
Oh, Delirious.
Absolutely. Interesting.
Absolutely. Here's why. Because when we got HBO in our house, and there was the cable box, and it was a new thing, a new invention to have HBO. The Eddie Murphy specials were one of the first things on HBO. And so Delirious was probably one of the first HBO texts that I became consumed with. And if you grew up in suburban Philadelphia, you knew Delirious by heart. And people always say to me, Lauren, why do you know these Eddie Murphy quotes, which I still quote, okay? And it is because they were canonical, when I was growing up, in terms of thinking about, the G.I. Joe, and thinking about You Ain't Got No Ice Cream, and all that was part of my childhood, a huge part. So my encounter with Eddie Murphy was as a stand-up comedian, and of course I saw many, many times Delirious, and then when Raw came out, saw that, and then of course the films, and Trading Places was so important in terms of both not Philly, but also SNL and then all the Trading Places adjacent films that came out, both starring Dan Aykroyd, but also, of course, then starring Eddie Murphy. So, how about you? What was your first encounter?
So, my first encounter was actually watching Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
And it very much was a thing for me when I guess I was in maybe 7th grade. I started staying up to watch Saturday Night Live long after my parents had gone to bed. And of course, sometimes my dad was at work. And it was so absolutely, I just thought he was the most exciting performer and just so thrilling. And I absolutely loved sort of Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood.
Right.
And of course, I think about that now and, you know, the Velvet Jones School of Technology where he's the pimp. And it's very strange to me because, of course, as you know, I mean, my sort of experience with Black culture growing up in Maine in the 1970s and 1980s was almost non-existent, you know, other than, say, you know, Michael Jackson or whatever, or watching television shows, you know, something like Good Times or What's Happening. And it was so interesting that I really responded, basically, to his everything he did on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
I just thought, again, he was such a genius. He was so exciting. And of course, I couldn't appreciate how young he was.
So young.
Right. And like everyone else.
19 years old.
19, I mean, just so, again, like just
amazing.
completely electric. And I did have some knowledge of sort of the kind of original cast of Saturday Night Live. And so it's not that I had no experience with the show.
Right.
You know, it was very much like stay up, you know, and sleep over kind of thing. But I just, again, thought he was electric. And so I loved Beverly Hills Cop. And I might not have told you this before, I saw Eddie Murphy live on the Raw tour.
Oh, my God.
My high school friend, Harding Lee Smith, who's now a restaurateur in Portland, Maine, he got tickets to Raw. And we went. And it was so funny. I can't believe I didn't tell you this.
No.
Because Eddie Murphy, right, this, of course, is in the Cumberland County Civic Center in Portland, Maine. Eddie Murphy looks out over the crowd and he pauses and he's like, do any black people live in Maine? And I always remember this, some guy like in the back yells out, 12, which was a generous number, I have to say, at the time. But certainly then I think as we have to acknowledge, right, Eddie has his dips and valleys of in his
Not
career.
all Eddie Murphy movies are equal or performances
They are not.
Yeah. So, okay, so we've talked about Trading Places, and I guess it's not that we're going to go over all his movies.
No,
that would
impossible.
take too long, and we don't have the time or the bandwidth for it. But we did both watch Boomerang, which Christine hated, I guess, and we both watched
Dolemite is my name.
I did not watch that.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, I did watch Dolemite is my name.
Okay, and we both watched Bowfinger.
Bowfinger, yes.
And which are three...
And we both watched the documentary.
We both watched the documentary. And of course, those are three kind of random choices because they're not necessarily the movies he's really known for. And, you know, we could spend all this time talking about those other movies, which you all have probably seen anyway. But I do think in some ways they're interesting choices because they do kind of, in some ways, fall outside his niche, right?
Yes.
They're not 48 Hours. They're not Coming to America. They're not... And then things like The Nutty Professor and they're not
Norbit, all of those things.
They're not body
dressing up in drag or whatever.
Right.
Yes, as an obese person or whatever. Yes.
Right. But I think they're interesting choices, and I will say the rewatch for me of Boomerang was a little different than when I watched it in college. But there are some moments in Boomerang that I just find so funny for whatever reason. That maybe that's why I love it so much.
I'm so eager to hear this.
Okay. All right. So if you don't know Boomerang, which I don't know when it came out. It came out in the 90s.
1992.
Okay. So this is Eddie Murphy's. Eddie Murphy produced it. I think he wrote it. This is his attempt to make a rom-com, okay? An all-black rom-com with the biggest stars of the day, okay? So you have him, of course. You have David Alan Grier. You have Martin Lawrence. You have Chris Rock. You have Tisha Campbell, Robin Gibbons, Halle Berry. Pretty much anyone who was a Grace Jones.
Eartha Kitt?
And Eartha Kitt.
Eartha Kitt looks amazing.
Eartha Kitt, yeah. So anyone who was kind of a big star, I mean, Arsenio Hall's not in it, but he could have been, anyway. So Boomerang.
The guy from the 7-Up commercial.
Right.
Jeffrey, whatever his last name was.
Anyway. So Boomerang is an attempt, they attempt to create this world of like this marketing firm that's marketing these beauty products, and it's the story of this player who...
Total womanizer.
And he's amazing with the ladies, and everyone's in love with him. And then he meets his match in Robin Givens, who kind of strings him along for a while, and then finally they get together, and then she tells him to basically,
he's like her fuckboy.
Puts him on ice, right. Yeah. Puts him on ice, and I'll call, don't call me, I'll call you. And then he, in his loneliness, gets together with Halle Berry, who is his art director, and who's
supposed to be the unattractive one.
Right. She is
which is hilarious.
Which is hilarious.
Yes.
Which is hilarious.
And she is a goddess.
She is a goddess, but also Robin Givens.
Givens looks unbelievable.
Yes, Robin Givens is a goddess as well.
Yeah, she was absolutely stunning in this movie.
Yes. So, but it is funny that Halle Berry is supposed to be like the
plain one.
Yeah, the plain one, right.
She's the mayor winning half of the film.
Anyway, and so in the end, he does get together with Halle Berry, and who's the sort of wholesome, girl with a golden heart.
Teaching children art after school.
Okay, so what I love, and my friend Allison, and if you're listening to this, Allison, you know Boomerang, okay? And we used to quote Boomerang all the time, okay? There are some moments...
Sorry, I'm afraid I can't do that.
There are moments in Boomerang when, I don't know, for whatever reason, they just catch me. So when the three guys are together, I'm there, okay? I'm there. I'm there for the way that they are... Their interchange. I am there for the Martin Lawrence racial stuff and the asparagus spears, and I am mostly there. Okay, probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, which I actually watch over and over again, is when David Alan Grier's parents come.
Oh my gosh!
And he's got the mushroom shirt and the mushroom belt and the mushroom jacket, and that for me is the best. Okay, and again, those scenes are so funny, and when they came out, okay, I couldn't stop laughing because they were so funny. Okay. And the rest
were you high at the time?
No.
Had you been drinking?
I mean, maybe, but maybe, but I did see it in college. But we watched it so many times, and then I just thought it was so funny. And when he says, the furs come off your coat, and you make some earrings, and it's just so stupid, but it's so funny. And again, the rest of it is like, the love part, all that, whatever. But there are some scenes in it that I just think are so funny, and I'm gonna stick with it.
Okay.
It's funny in the cheesiest, dumbest sense, but it is so funny, and some of it too reminds me. It has that kind of Billy Ray Valentine quality to it. I mean, if you're going from the Billy Ray Valentine stuff to Eddie with Martin Lawrence and David Alan Grier, and them just talking about, like, when they're going in to buy the suit, and they're like, what are you on, layaway? Like, I mean, to me, I'm just like, they're at their best when they're doing that. And I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but it always makes me laugh. And, and I love all those actors and comedians. And yeah. Okay.
I thought it was like the most unfunny thing I had maybe ever seen. I think the real sort of like star of it is David Alan Grier. I mean, he really sort of surprised me. And not that, I know he's so talented, but like that particular, he in some ways seemed like he had the most to do. Here's the thing with it, is that of course in the documentary that we watched, right? And as you pointed out, the documentary in a lot of ways is kind of a vanity project for Eddie. And there's a lot of excuse making in the documentary for Eddie's failures. I think that's right. Fair
Despite his fantastic house.
Yes. With the beautiful atrium and...
like 17 rooms.
17, he supposedly has an Elvis room, actually. Like, they don't talk about that in the documentary, but I've read that elsewhere. Anyway, and so in the documentary, right, the reason that is given for why Boomerang was a failure is because white audiences were not prepared to see an all-black rom-com.
Right.
But what I would say about it as a rom-com, okay, tell me if you agree with this or not. I was like, okay, it's obviously not a rom-com in that, okay, it's rated R, right? It has sex scenes, right? Including a really weird one where the camera, for reasons I don't understand, was super focused on Robin Givens' ass.
Okay.
Like, you know, with a sheet over it, but like, you know, pumping around. And I was like, I just kind of don't understand that, Reginald Hudlin. But, so it's not a sort of classic rom-com in that way, right? But it also was not a super kind of dirty sex comedy like American Pie.
Or like Porky's.
Or Porky's, right? And so to me, it fell into this really awkward middle ground where I'm like, okay, like when the parents that you mentioned, right? When the dad is like, whip the pussy at Thanksgiving dinner. Right? I'm like, okay, but that's not, that's not funny to me.
It is. It's funny to me.
But it would have been funny in a film like, right, again, sort of American Pie, or even 40-Year-Old Virgin, which is about older people in a sex comedy. And so that's the thing is, I was like, okay, you know, in some ways you're going to hate this, but it kept reminding me of Tim Gunn on Project Runway. When he would say about some particular designs, he would say, it's not a talent issue, it's a taste issue. Do you remember? And so to me, I was like, I appreciate that Eddie at the time, right, he was flying high in terms of like, I can do anything. But I'm like, again, it's not rom-com, and of course we have our episode about rom-coms, but again, it's also not hard R sex comedy. And to me, that like middle ground was so awkward.
To me,
it just did not work.
To me, it works. It works. Okay. And when you've got Grace Jones, right?
Oh my God!
When are we going to fuck, right? And
but that's awful. But then she's in a restaurant. She's literally like showing everyone her vagina.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's just gross. And then she's like, not funny. It's gross.
Yeah. Well.
And because again, I was like, there's a way to do. And that's the thing is, I feel like Eddie Murphy thought again. You agree with him?
I agree with Eddie.
Like
I agree with Eddie.
You know, her basically like showing her vagina to all of these men and women in a restaurant. I'm like, that's just gross. I mean, it just whatever he had in mind, right? In terms of like that being funny.
I'm down with Strange. I'm down with Strange.
Oh my God, I just thought it was so.
I was so down with Strange. Yeah, I mean the whole.
Granted, Grace Jones again. She looked incredible.
She does look incredible.
But to me, like so much of it was just like, again, would you want to sit down at like Thanksgiving dinner, right, and have basically like
those people there? Yeah.
But saying like whip the pussy, like again.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's in the context. We already know that those parents are like completely inappropriate. They're completely embarrassing to David Alan Grier. David Alan Grier is like he is so embarrassed by his parents, and now we know why. Right? They have sex in the bathroom during Thanksgiving dinner, and his dad is like, you know, completely inappropriate, but he is so embarrassed, and in a lot of ways to me it explains why David Alan Grier is so kind of mild-mannered and shy, and he is not obviously he's not a Marcus, and he's also not the Martin Lawrence character, that he is so kind of reserved, and it's because these parents are like, you know, out of control, and that's the way I took it.
Okay,
but I also was just like, it's a bit, right? It's like Eddie Murphy could have played those parents himself, and he probably wanted to.
Well, it might have been funnier if he did. No, but do you know what I mean? It's neither fish nor fowl. I mean, it really just isn't.
To me, the parents are like more characters from Coming to America Barbershop. Like the father could have the Whip the Pussy guy could have easily been in the Coming to America Barbershop.
But that's the other thing, is that I feel like the fact that Eddie understood it and presented it, right, as a rom-com.
Right.
And, you know, maybe it's just, again, you know, thinking back, obviously, again, we talked about, like, It Happened One Night. And the idea that it's just the wrong kind of vulgarity. It needed to be either super more vulgar, right, crazy vulgar, but it just, I mean, to me, it just didn't, I don't know. Again, it wasn't rom-com, and it wasn't super hard R sex comedy. It really was as if all of a sudden, right, in It Happened One Night, that Claudette Colbert is like, okay, I'm going to blow Clark Gable up. No, seriously, right? I want to see Claudette Colbert's ass, you know, pumping with like a sheet over it, where I'm like, why are we getting this camera angle? Why? You know?
Yeah.
Or again, if like Clark Gable's like, you know, look at that snatch.
Look, I loved it. Okay,
and I'm glad.
And there were parts of it when I watched it this time. Of course, they're a little more cringe, but on the whole, I just think of those couple vignettes with those couple characters that are so funny to me, and that you know, they fit into the into the bit, right? Okay. And so that's why I love Boomerang.
I think the one other thing I will say is that to me also, I feel like Eddie Murphy himself did not seem comfortable in that kind of role as like basically what's fundamentally a romantic lead.
Sure.
And it is interesting to think sort of how few films, right, he has been a kind of romantic
Absolutely.
lead. Right. Absolutely. I mean, I can't really think of another one.
Well, in The Nutty Professor, on the other, he is.
Okay. Of course. But that's of course a really like broad comedy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so that's what, and this kind of like, it seemed to me like he just was kind of embodying space that felt
and in Coming to America, he is too.
That's true. In
a certain way.
Coming to America is a rom-com.
It is.
That's the rom-com.
It is.
Coming to America.
It is.
And so to me, again,
but he's also not playing himself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Whereas in Coming to America,
yes,
one could argue, right? Which, again, I these are the moments which make me laugh. I mean, to think about James Earl Jones wearing that lion's head, right? Like, that's the first image that comes to my mind of Coming to America. And I mean, he's just. And again, that barbershop scene, which is so genius, it's one of the most amazing scenes ever. Yes. That one person is playing those, however many hands.
I don't think I knew until watching
handful of people.
The documentary that Rick Baker did the makeup for that. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, obviously it makes sense. Rick Baker did all the great makeup for everything. But anyway, so okay. But we both did rewatch Bowfinger.
Which it's funny, my first watch of Bowfinger was, I guess, neither here nor there. That I was just kind of, I liked it, but I wasn't like running to see it again. And I probably, honestly, have only seen it now twice. The first time I saw it, and this time.
And this time.
But I did appreciate it in a lot of ways, partly because I didn't remember all the people that were in it.
Yeah.
And
I had forgotten Heather Graham.
And I had forgotten Christine Baranski.
Yeah,
and even Robert Downey Jr., who's not in it that much, but forgot about him. And Heather Graham is great in Bowfinger. Yeah, and it is really funny. And again, I, as a huge Steve Martin fan, and this isn't my favorite Steve Martin movie, but every time we watch Steve Martin, it's like the two of them together, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's
and I love Steve Martin and I love Eddie Murphy, so it's just that coupling again together that is awesome, and again in very, very interesting ways, because Steve Martin is so no holds barred, whatever, we're gonna do whatever here. And so the premise of Bowfinger, for those of you who either don't remember or haven't seen it, sort of down on his luck filmmaker who's completely run out of money, who's trying to kind of get back in the scene, and then
the fringes of Hollywood,
right? And then there's this major movie star actor, Eddie Murphy,
Kit
Ramsey, who's can make any movie he wants, has any pick of the litter or whatever. And Steve Martin comes up with the idea that he's going to make a Kit Ramsey movie without Kit Ramsey actually knowing about it. And they're just
surreptitiously filming him,
kind of stalking him, and then midway through the movie, he actually finds a guy who looks just like Kit Ramsey, but
also played by Eddie Murphy,
but has a mustache and glasses and braces,
super
dorky, and he convinces this guy to basically be a Kit Ramsey stand-in.
Yes, and later finds out that it is in fact Kit Ramsey's brother,
right?
Which he does not know initially,
right?
And so of course we have Eddie Murphy playing both of these characters, very, very different,
very well,
and it just happens that Kit Ramsey is under the sway of basically what is supposed to be Scientology, this movement called Mindhead, and he is already paranoid, which then the fact that he is being stalked by these people filming him and talking about aliens,
an alien
movie makes him even more paranoid. And so you have, again, very, very different characters. And Eddie Murphy, of course, is completely believable as both of them.
He is.
The sort of super dorky, like glasses wearing, braces wearing, sort of hanger on. But then also the superstar who is
confident,
but before he delves into paranoia and hates the Laker girls. So one of the reasons why I wish you would watch Dolemite is that Dolemite is my name is basically shares so much DNA with Bowfinger.
Okay.
Because this is the true story of Rudy Ray, whose last name I'm now blanking. The true story of this guy who was kind of working in this record store in the early 1970s.
Okay.
And again, fringes of Hollywood, wants to be a star, can't figure out how to become a star. And he did a comedy album with the hilariously vulgar title, Eat Out More Often. God. See, that's something I laugh every time I think of it. But then he basically started making blaxploitation films. Okay. And it really is very similar to Bowfinger in that when he makes his first film, Dolemite is my name, he basically has no money, right? He's sort of scrounging around. He finds all of these people. And of course, in the film, Eddie Murphy plays this real life actor, Rudy Ray, whatever, who did the Dolemite films. And so it is very similar to Bowfinger. Okay. Sort of this kind of scrappy, almost like Ed Wood style. Yeah, right? We're kind of getting together and making this film. So, what can we say about Bowfinger in terms of Eddie, in terms of sort of African-American culture, in terms of film? Because it is very much this sense, it's yet another, say, a film like The Player, right? We've talked about films about Hollywood, where Hollywood loves to talk about itself. But also, in terms of, again, Dolemite, in terms of this, very much this idea of, like, people who want to break into the business, but they can't.
Or they'll do anything, or the business is so ridiculous that they're willing to do just about anything, and it's going to work.
And it's going to work.
Because the Steve Martin character and all of the things that he is willing to do when he gets... what is the name of not Kit Ramsey, but the brother?
It's Jiff. I think that's it. It's Jiff.
All right. Well, when he gets dorky Eddie Murphy, let's just say, to run across the highway, to run into oncoming traffic and to convince him that those are stunt drivers, okay? I mean, it is so funny, and there are so many moments where they are just running after this guy and where he can, again, Steve Martin is just so good in convincing people. And then I love when the Heather Graham character, when, he finally realizes, that she's been with everybody, and then he steals her credit card and like buys all the film and, funds the rest of the movie. So,
because she also is this character, right? The classic sort of ingenue who we see her showing up in Hollywood on the bus and then just basically keeps sleeping with sort of like higher and higher up people on the film until she's with a lesbian Hollywood executive at the end. Right. And so very much kind of her happy ending. So we do have, with Bowfinger, we absolutely have this kind of physicality, right? That Eddie Murphy is so good at.
Yes.
And the fact that it really is just braces. It's not one of these sort of body
huge
suit, makeup, right? The sort of thing we see.
No. You know it's Eddie Murphy, but you kind of don't. But you buy that it's not.
Yes.
You buy that this is a guy who looks exactly like Eddie Murphy, but acts completely differently, and you can buy that he loves to run errands. He wants to go to Starbucks. That's his goal in life. That's his dream. And on the side, he's also going to do these action scenes and fill in for when Kit Ramsey is at the rehab center or whatever, the therapy center.
The Scientology
Celebrity Center.
The Celebrity Center.
Right. So anyway, it's also this sort of moment in time, I feel like, with Bowfinger, that the kind of racial dynamics are in this very, very precise moment.
Yes. Yes, I agree with that.
I don't know if we'd make Bowfinger today, but it is this moment where there's this kind of comedy, there's this kind of talk about race in the film, but not as explicitly as there is in, of course, Boomerang. Right?
Yes.
But there's this recognition still.
Yeah, and it's not, it's definitely not the case, right? We're not supposed to think that Kit Ramsey is kind of like a quote-unquote black actor, as Dave Chappelle would say, right? Black actors have to stick together. So there's not that.
No.
And, certainly one thing that did not age particularly well, right, is sort of going to the, border and kind of gathering all of these Hispanic men who are illegally immigrating, right, who become part of the troupe.
Right.
Right, and very much the sense that this is kind of this scrappy little company, working together where they're all collaborating, and they all then become these like camera geeks, right? Sort of knowing the perfect lenses and stuff.
Yeah, between that not aging very well and all of the homophobia in Boomerang,
And there was a lot.
And there's a lot.
Yes,
there's a lot. Which is also pretty interesting in the sense of just that's part of the bro code in a lot of ways between these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting.
Yeah.
Not in a good way necessarily, but doesn't age well, let's just say.
Yes. Well, one thing, I did want to make sure, even though we're having a little bit of a shorter episode today, one thing that I did want to come out is something you and I discussed briefly from the documentary where, and again, as we said earlier, the documentary makes a lot of excuses for Eddie's failures. And one of the most important ones, right, is when he excuses not winning the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for Dreamgirls because Norbit had come out.
Right.
And that everyone hated it and thought it was ridiculous and awful, and that influenced Academy voters, right? Who knows?
Right.
But one thing that you and I did talk about is, and I think both of us found it not super persuasive, when Eddie tries to argue that there really could only be one kind of black actor at a time.
Right.
And that this is, and in a sense, he it doesn't work out very, right? He doesn't spend time describing why he thinks that, but he basically just say, right, well, okay, there's me, but then I have to go away if there's going to be Will Smith, right?
Right.
So the two can't occupy the same space.
Right.
And again, I didn't...
Or even all the people he inspires.
All the people he inspires.
Chris Rock, Kevin Hart, Chappelle.
People who do have
all the
careers.
people that have huge film careers that are Martin, of course, and Arsenio. List goes on. All the people that he has inspired, but also co-starred with.
Yes. And so, what did you think about that when he makes that argument? Did you see it as just, again, him trying to save face for kind of that lull he experienced, say, in the 1990s? There really, I remembered Bowfinger as being kind of, not quite a comeback, but that he was kind of a second billing role in that film because it was after kind of a lull in his career. And I might just be misremembering that. But certainly that seemed to be what the documentary was saying, right? That he had to kind of fall and wasn't popular with audiences, in effect, because Will Smith sort of occupied that single space. Which, again, I didn't think was persuasive. I'll say it again. But I don't know. What did you think when he said that? Taking sort of a longer view.
Well, I think the longer view, and of course he does talk a lot about Richard Pryor, as does everyone in the film. Chappelle and the rest all talk about Richard Pryor. And as I told you, the biggest hole in the documentary is Bill Cosby. And now, of course, he talks about his own impressions of Bill Cosby, but for maybe legal reasons or because the documentary came out, like a year ago or something like that.
It's recent.
But it's a recent documentary, and the, transgressions of Bill Cosby are known at the time that he makes a documentary. So he doesn't want to talk about the huge career of Bill Cosby, which, again, it's hard to make an argument that there are no big black stars or shows with black casts when you have the Cosby Show on, and the longer career of Bill Cosby as long as you do. But he doesn't want to talk about that.
Yeah, actually, if I can jump in for 1 second, what was interesting to me is that when he says, when he's maybe like, I don't know, early 60s now, sort of mid 60s. But when he said, oh, well, I never saw like a black actor on TV growing up. But of course, Bill Cosby was in I Spy, right? And in the late 60s. And so I was like, oh, that is interesting. Because yes, he would have seen Bill Cosby
in Long Island, in the milieu that he was in, and also with in the kind of family history that he has, and he's somebody who's into imagination and characters. And, Bill Cosby, more so than Richard Pryor, even as somebody who has the voices, who does the impressions, who Fat Albert, right? He's voiced. He has that kind of versatility in a lot of ways. That Eddie Murphy does. And again, Richard Pryor, as funny as Richard Pryor is, and of course he has this interesting film career, the movies with Gene Wilder, and then of course all kinds of other things. But I would put, in terms of just career-wise, the versatility is more similar to Bill Cosby.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That makes sense.
Because again, he had done the I Spy, he had done the Fat Albert, he had done the Cosby Show, and then he did other stand-up things, and of course Bill Cosby comes off very differently than Eddie Murphy does, but he does have that kind of chameleon-like sense to himself, even though everyone knows what Bill Cosby sounds like, and he also has this very identifiable voice. Eddie Murphy talks about his laugh and how he had to sort of change his laugh, things like that. So the other thing thing that he mentioned, which he didn't really expand upon, was he did say, well, there could only be one of me, but he's like, but also there was Oprah, also there was Whitney, also there was Michael, also, and you're like, well, okay, well, I understand they're all not comedians, but they're all super famous, and they're all, you know, selling out everything they do, and they're the most I mean, Michael Jackson is the most famous performer, period. Okay, and so what does that say, right? What does that say? And
well, in some ways, I wonder if maybe a kind of a better example that he didn't really dwell on was Garrett Morris. Right, Garrett Morris, who is sort of the quote unquote black actor on Saturday Night Live,
right,
who then in effect sort of is never complains justifiably that he didn't get a lot of screen time in the original cast, that he wasn't sort of a breakout star, and that would make more sense, right? That then Eddie Murphy sort of occupies this quote unquote role, right? And so that to me was a better, sort of a smaller example, right? But a better one.
Right. No, I for sure. And I don't mean to suggest in any way that there were tons and tons and tons of roles for black actors at the time. No way. But he did have a kind of entourage of people that he was around, right? And he talks about James Brown, who's of course of an older generation, but that there were also some of these younger actors and people who was coming up with, and then you see them in his material, right? I mean, you see, of course, Chris Rock is in Boomerang, and we see other actors who admired him, who then he employs or works with or collaborates with, and then we have something also like Comic Relief on HBO, and we have Whoopi Goldberg, right? And that's really important. And this whole world of comedy and stand-up comedy that is so important to HBO in the 80s, where there's all these stand-up comics.
Just like Dave Chappelle is for Netflix now.
That's right. That's right. And so he's not just coming into a moment in terms of an opening for black performers. He's also coming into an opening for comedy and for a certain stripe of comedy that in some ways he may have pioneered at that moment in the 80s, right? But that also, it was very profitable and that enjoyable and that people loved it. And as you said, you saw him live, right? So, and there are other people too that were touring around this time, and the sort of Gary Shandlings, right? The people of that ilk who weren't as famous as Eddie Murphy, but still stand-up comedy was a thing.
Yes.
And again, the Dan Aykroyds, the Steve Martins, that whole generation of comedians, Chevy Chase's, all of those comedians also had stand-up venues.
That actually reminds me that one thing that, I didn't watch it again, but Jerry Seinfeld has that show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, right? And there is an Eddie Murphy episode, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
In part because, he does seem to be, as, I've read elsewhere, that he's very shy, right? And sort of very kind of insecure, right? And very introverted. And so he really does sort of seemed uncomfortable with himself, which is, and then of course you can argue, right? This is one of the things that makes him a fantastic performer. But I have to say, I just, since we have to end quickly, Dolemite Is My Name was fantastic.
Okay.
I really loved it. And it was much like Boomerang in that basically all of these actors, right, that he had worked with, that are recognizable. But it was such a fantastic, I think you would really love it as a story about blaxploitation as a genre, right? Again, it's a biopic. It is an actual biopic about this Rudy Ray, whose last name I'm blanking on, but just sort of the building of that career and how blaxploitation, how his films, first not picked up by anyone, right? Then they get picked up by a distributor played by Bob Odenkirk, who's like, this is it, right? We're going to do midnight shows. It's going to be grassroots promotion. And it was really, it was just wonderful. And Eddie Murphy is fantastic in it. He's absolutely great. And I think you would really love it.
Well, I'm going to watch it. I have been, not to pivot too much, but I have been just consumed with other media, and I know you have to go and pick up your kid, and
you can watch Dolemite, and we can have a part 2 and talk about it.
We can, but we also have to talk about the drama.
Yes, we do.
Hopefully next time we will talk about the drama and the drama of the drama.
The drama of the drama. I will look forward to it.
But until then,
Harpy's out.
Harpy's out.